The God Emperor's son smiled upon his domain, entire continents firmly under his clasp. The legendary Donald Trump, real estate mogul and reality TV host, had used his mystical powers to acquire the great Isle of Green, as he began to lay the foundations for our empire we see today. As a humble scribe from the 52nd state of Australia, it is a profound honour to document the history of such a leader. We remain grateful to his heir and our leader, Emperor Barron, who has steered us to even greater heights. Long live the Trump family, and long live the American Empire. Welcome to History's Influence. This video isn't going to be a fanfiction fantasy, as the prophetic introduction may have suggested. And before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to help this small channel eventually reach 10,000 subscribers. I'd also like to give a shout out to my patrons, Mintark YT and our new patron, Dark Age Sage. Now, onto the video. Returning US President Donald Trump has recently expressed his desire to purchase Greenland from Denmark, alongside other expansionist desires, some more fantastical than others. But is there a realistic way in which Greenland could be acquired? And if so, what would the ramifications of such a deal be for Greenland, America, and the world itself? Those are the questions we'll be answering in this alternate history. We should start by answering an important question. Why would anyone be interested in Greenland in the first place? Speaking geographically, Greenland is the largest island on Earth, holding a huge ice sheet in a bowl-shaped central terrain. There are fjords scattered across the coast. The island is cold without a warm Gulf Stream flowing nearby, a benefit the close island of Iceland does receive. Greenland may be cold, but it also contains a plethora of valuable natural resources. The American Geological Survey, and other such organizations, found rare earth minerals, used for smartphones, fresh water, lithium, alongside some iron ore, gold, and uranium. But such a resource-rich island comes with its own native population and history. This isn't the frozen desert of Antarctica. To begin, human settlement in Greenland began at around 2500 BC. These initial settlers went extinct in around 800 BC, likely due to the poor climate, to be followed by future settlers. Greenland always stayed sparsely populated, although the population centres in which people would settle varied over the millennia. Europeans would later arrive, as the Norse Vikings from Iceland would colonise the island after discovering it in 982 AD. But by the 1400s, their two colonies were wiped out for reasons that are still debated. Before their extinction, the Inuit peoples migrated to the island during the 1200s, outlasting the Norse and being the predominant group present on the island today. Centuries later, in 1721, the Scandinavians, under Denmark-Norway, sent an expedition to Greenland, eventually recolonising the island but maintaining its Inuit population. Missionary work was a crucial part of colonisation. The vast majority of Inuit are still Protestant today. A missionary also founded the modern capital of Nuketown. Wait, I mean Nuke. Denmark and Norway would split apart, with Denmark maintaining Greenland, much to Norway's dismay. But from 1867 onwards, the Danes would receive numerous offers from a nation interested in purchasing the island. This nation would be the young and expansionist United States of America. The US were unable to purchase the island in all of their attempts though, even after militarily occupying it during World War II. But they were later able to install military bases and secret nuclear facilities to help fight the Cold War against the Soviet Union. When the Cold War ended, the need for such an island seemed to dissipate. But decades later, in 2019, Republican President Donald Trump had brought the issue back to the spotlight, apparently of his own initiative, but this amounted to nothing. However, in late 2024, preempting his second term as president, Trump and his team reignited such rhetoric. But why would he do such a thing in either instance? You see, America was the sole global power following the defeat of the Soviet Union, but this is starting not to be the case anymore. New rivals are coming to threaten its position on the world stage. Greenland's position in the Arctic makes it crucial for American geopolitical interests. It would allow them to monitor Atlantic and Arctic shipping, take advantage of new trade routes that appear from the melting Arctic ice sheet, and would help weaken the position of their rivals of Russia and China. Trump also sees the purchase as a big real estate deal. His words, not mine. And it's clear that he wishes to carve his name into the history books. But will Trump be successful in such a deal? I believe it's unlikely, but there is a possible arrangement that may work, which this video will be exploring the consequences of. Many powerful people in Denmark seem to be really upset by Trump's attempt to annex Greenland. The madman even refused to rule out using military force. The Danish king recently changed their coat of arms to emphasize the Greenlandic portion. Kind of petty, I'd say. I can understand the anger. Denmark has been a loyal ally to America since the end of World War II and the creation of NATO. And the Danes hold some leverage in negotiations. 74% of America's insulin comes from Denmark, not to mention all of their Lego. So why would Trump want to backstab his ally, a member of NATO and the European Union, causing who knows what in consequence? Such concerns are irrelevant. Greenland is fast-tracked to hold a referendum of independence, perhaps in a matter of months, which the Danish government themselves can't interfere with. Denmark only controls the foreign and defence policy of Greenland, alongside providing much-needed subsidies. But regardless, how will Trump be capable of attempting such a deal? In America, Republican members of the lower house of Congress recently introduced the Make Greenland Great Again Act, giving Trump a 60-day window from his inauguration to enter negotiations to acquire Greenland. We will assume that this law passes, thanks to the Republican majority in both the lower and upper houses. Additionally, geopolitical interests commonly attract bipartisan support. I don't think the Democrats will be effective in blocking this law. So within 60 days of his inauguration, Trump will agree to acquire Greenland. He will come to an unconventional agreement with Greenland's parliament, to be enacted after they vote for independence in the following months. They've said they could hold the vote as soon as April 2025. Greenland is going to be joining a compact of free association with America, same as the Pacific island nations of Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Palau. Both America and Greenland's interests will be met through this peculiar pact. It will be a huge success. Greenland is not for sale is a slogan repeated by Greenlanders, but with this arrangement, they will still technically be a sovereign state, provided with state membership in the United Nations. They will also receive key funding. 20% of Greenland's GDP and 50% of their budget comes from $600 million in Danish subsidies per year, helping keep Greenland afloat. America will increase such spending to help with resource extraction projects, which Greenlanders do support in moderation. The terms of payment and moderation of such extraction will be agreed to in the contract. Another unique feature this type of agreement holds, a trump card Trump may play to sweeten the deal, is the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund for Greenlanders, letting them benefit financially in the long term from shorter-term mineral extraction, similar to America's Arctic state of Alaska or the Arctic nation of Norway. But most importantly for America, defense of the island would be an American responsibility, allowing them to establish more military bases. Of course, both defense and resource extraction would require new infrastructure. Danish infrastructure development on the island has its effectiveness debated. Depressing apartment blocks like Block P were built with doors so small that the Inuits couldn't fit in with their winter clothing. I'm sure America could build superior community-based infrastructure, even if the core struggles of urbanization are still faced by the Inuit. The urbanization of Greenland was initiated by Denmark historically, but it's also led to high social isolation and suicide rates, as the Inuit shifted away from their traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyles. But regardless, the details of this compact of free association will be renewed every 15 years, keeping both nations satisfied with the arrangement. This would be a low-cost form of imperialism, which wouldn't require military garrisons against the local population, much less of a hassle than prior American colonial attempts. Take the Philippines, for example. How would the world respond to such an acquisition? As previously mentioned, NATO or the European Union wouldn't be in a position to put up effective resistance. For their own geopolitical defense, they will remain loyal American allies. But what of America's rivals of Russia or China? The Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, agreed that Greenland has a right to self-determination, which in theory supports the American acquisition we outlined. But in reality, a fear of conflict in the Arctic would compound. leading to Russia creating more military bases in the region. China doesn't hold any Arctic territories like Russia does. They will instead be blocked from investing into Greenland. They won't be able to help build airports and mining projects as they have already. They wouldn't be able to perform their strategy of debt trap diplomacy, offering to construct property the nation can't afford and then taking ownership of said property as compensation for such debts. China's minority stakes of ownership in the majority of Greenland's mines also won't be allowed anymore. These issues with America's rivals may be concerning, but aren't very substantial. War won't break out from such an acquisition anytime soon, and the world lived happily ever after, right? Unfortunately, no. Geopolitical tensions will continue to boil over. The future of the world is uncertain. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has set a dangerous precedent regarding the annexation of foreign territory. China's keen eye on Taiwan seems not to droop, but to sharpen in focus. And unrest in Western societies is seemingly being ignored by its ruling class. Within this context, and within a few decades, America will reduce the autonomy of their holdings, annexing Greenland as a proper territory. Why and how, you may ask? Climate change will continue to increase the world's temperature, melting the Greenlandic ice sheet and exposing more of Greenland's natural resources. Trump's drill baby drill policies reflect an American shift away from climate preservation to affordable energy extraction, which they will pursue in earnest. Although rare earth minerals, which are used to help construct renewable energy sources, will be extracted too. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think? All of the relevant infrastructure, such as airports, establishment of mining towns, and trading ports, will benefit the Inuit regarding wealth. They will be allowed to partake as they were before. But it will also lead to their ethnic displacement through American workers. The 27,000 strong labour pool of Greenland would be insufficient for such projects, and many American companies would want to hire their own workers from mainland America. I don't believe the Americans and Inuit will come to an amicable agreement during these developments. The Inuit will eventually be sidelined and have their island acquired as a territory. They would be too weak and distant from other powers to resist. Russia wouldn't want to intervene and risk nuclear war for an island they may not acquire anyway. Greenland wouldn't reach a population high enough for statehood, however. 576,000 would be the smallest population of a US state, being Wyoming. Greenland currently has a population of 57,000. Modern America is led by a corrupt oligarchy, in which corporate and lobbying interests are favoured, and the will of the people ignored. An under-discussed study showed that there is zero correlation between public opinion and laws passed in the United States. However, the assassination attempts on Trump and his popular vote election victory signal a vibe shift in America. Even the most anti-Trump of media outlets seem to be conceding this point. I believe the elites of America are yielding to such changes. Judging from the Trump administration's actions in their first few days of his second term, I believe his administration will be a major challenge to the entrenched interests of many of America's elites, and will benefit key groups too, such as big tech. America is a divided nation, but with these things in mind in the long run, it's possible the nation may resolve its current internal strife and shift to an America-centric orientation. This would be a move away from maintaining their global, trade and ideologically based empire into a more isolationist power. Now, this is by no means certain for numerous reasons, and I'm very unsure of the fate of America myself. But let's assume this does occur. After all, this is a video about America conquering Greenland, and the precedent of such a move suits an expansionist timeline. And of course, take any future predictions I make with a grain of salt, and feel free to explain my ignorance in the comment section below. To begin, America will still be maintaining their fantastic geopolitical situation. They're surrounded by weak neighbours who they dominate in the Americas. They have 2 oceans for land defence, and they control some of the most resource-rich and fertile land on Earth, which will only have expanded by their acquisition of Greenland. But with a policy of isolationism, the world's trade routes won't be defended by America anymore. The world is a developed and autonomous enough place where this won't be too big of an issue directly. This isn't a post-World War II era anymore. But the geopolitical consequences of America's withdrawal would be substantial. During Trump's second term, he will negotiate an end to the Ukraine war, granting Russia their 4 claimed oblasts alongside Crimea, pre-existing American contracts will ensure the Western reconstruction and alignment of Ukraine, balanced with mutual defense agreements to appease the Russians, and a promise that Ukraine won't directly join NATO or the European Union. As a legacy of Trump, Europe is going to start beginning to pay their fair share within NATO, eventually developing their own strategic ties. They will initially oppose Russia, a unifying enemy for a reawakening continent. This will change, however. A patchwork of alliances and agreements will instead define Europe later, as individual nations will begin to assert their own unique interests. The threat of nuclear war would prevent the scale of conflict we saw in the World Wars, but conflict will now be far more likely to occur. Struggles inside the nations won't be avoided either. Europe faces numerous issues for its near future, dealing with the ramifications of mass migration, poor population structures, too many old people, real estate prices, poor economic conditions, and increasing economic inequality. I would expect drastic regime changes in nations where the ruling class is too slow and ineffective to make change. This will strongly determine alliance networks, which would be too difficult to predict. So, let's hope Russia doesn't get too powerful. Or Germany. Or France. Or Spain. Or Italy. I think I'll stop here. I would also expect similar regime change in nations worldwide. Iran, for example, does hold an anti-Western and anti-American regime, but dissatisfaction with the regime does seem to be increasing. Moving back to entire regions, Africa will be heavily influenced by numerous powers, including America and individual European nations such as France, alongside pre-existing connections with Russia and China. For a more controversial region, the Middle East will remain important to America in the short term. For example, the petrodollar arrangement with OPEC does secure value for the US dollar through exchanging it for trades of oil. This won't ultimately matter though for the Middle East. Direct military intervention in any major conflict in the region won't be popular with the American people. Not since the disastrous wars of the 2000s. And ultimately, it's halfway across the world from the American mainland. I believe such ties will eventually be broken as a result, with America remaining friendly but no longer being the hegemon of the region. Looking at all of these global developments, China may seem to strongly benefit from such things, with America retracting its power worldwide, right? Well, not so fast. I don't believe China will be capable of invading Taiwan, even in the long run. They are an export-heavy economy which heavily relies on naval trade. But in the case of invading Taiwan, they would need to bear the brunt of naval blockades. Expensive land trade would not compensate for this issue, and neither would land or air superiority with their army. I don't believe they will be capable of building a superior navy to match their regional rivals combining together, for example Japan, South Korea, Australia and America. Remember that the US will still hold territories in the Pacific themselves, and Trump, even as an isolationist, holds a deep concern regarding China. But I would expect China to expand their diplomacy or perhaps military power into neighbouring regions of land, whose outcomes would be too difficult to predict. America will also pursue an imperialistic policy of its own, without strong neighbours. Within decades, they will annex the Panama Canal, keeping the trade route secure from foreign powers. Take how China today has Hong Kong businesses owning portions of the ports currently. After all, the construction of the initial canal was commissioned by America, with local workers mind you, from 1904 to 1914. Additionally, Panamanian independence from Colombia was propped up by America to help such a construction take place. Another item of expansion on America's list would be Canada, but I don't believe they would be such a pushover. Take their anti-American identity, stemming from loyalists fleeing America after their War of Independence. This goes back for centuries. Or their relatively large population of 40 million. Or of their good trade arrangement and alliance with America already. But assuming the US and Canada maintain a similar ethnic makeup, I believe within a few centuries, it's inevitable that the US will annex Canada. Canada holds too many natural resources. It has a culture divided between English and French, alongside provincial differences. They also hold a stark military weakness in comparison to the US. America will eventually annex the land of Maple. Trump's dream of a greater America would truly come to fruition. And with that vile anti-Canadian spiel out of the way, I will be leaving it there for this video. I believe any more predictions would be too speculatory, even more so than what we've discussed already. This has been History's Influence. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Catch you later.